Hello, everybody. Welcome to our monthly webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's session is about Amazon and Azure and which cloud is most suited for your purposes. Now, we've been working with customers over the last many years, and in the past couple of quarters, we've noticed that most of the questions that come our way are picking between Amazon and Azure. And we end up answering these questions, giving them prescriptive advice, and given the number of questions around Amazon and Azure that were coming our way, we decided to create a webinar around it. So in today's session, Gautam Thakcham, our CTO, will talk about the similarities and differences between Amazon and Azure and give you direct and prescriptive advice on which cloud provider makes more sense given your particular situation. We do have a chat area for questions, so as you have questions arising, please feel free to submit your questions on the chat, and depending on whether or not it makes sense during the presentation, we'll address it then, or we will definitely address your questions at the end of the session. Our presentation also has a demo, so stay till the end of the webinar to make sure you catch our new features in our product. With that, I'm going to hand over to Gautam.
Thank you, Garima. Good morning, everybody. And as per agenda, the first thing I'm going to talk about is how does one go about selecting a cloud service provider. So essentially, when you're looking at selecting a cloud service provider, you're obviously looking at the technical considerations as well as business considerations. So we're going to dive a little deeper into that. So first and foremost, it really starts with the type of project that you are thinking about for the cloud project. It could be new development, it could be a lift and shift for existing infrastructure, or it could be a lift and optimize an existing legacy application infrastructure, or it could be hybrid infrastructure, or you're just doing development and testing in the cloud as well. Each of these has an impact on what kind of cloud you're looking at. Once you have determined what is the type of project, the next thing you would obviously consider is the technologies that what would be relevant for you. And then you review the offering from each of the clouds of interest, and then look at the capabilities, the maturity level, the availability, performance, and so on and so forth. All of those things come into play. Almost every cloud operator there provides free trials. You may want to consider doing a free trial at that time as well. In addition to the technical considerations, the business considerations one should factor in are cost, obviously. A lot of the decision about moving to the cloud is all about cost as well. The current relationship you have with a particular cloud vendor is a big important factor. Maybe you already have presence in Amazon or Google or Microsoft, or you are a Microsoft shop. All of these have an impact on decision about taking the particular cloud of choice. The third element is skills availability. When it comes to the cloud, there's a paradigm shift of how you run, manage, and operate your infrastructure. Do you have the skill set available? And which skill set is easy for you to develop quickly? Those are the kind of questions you have to consider as well. Geography is another factor. Do you have geographical considerations to take into account? So these are the parameters you look at as you decide on a particular cloud of choice. Now let's take a look at what's out there and what does Gartner say. As you can see very clearly, Amazon is out there as a visionary and leader ahead of everybody, very closely followed by Microsoft and trying to catch up very fast as well. And Google definitely catching up on as well. Very, very, very active in the tech-oriented industry, born in the cloud type of companies, but also really focusing pretty heavily in the enterprise as well today. Moving right along, today we're going to talk about Amazon and Azure. So let's take a look about really how are they approaching providing services to the cloud, to the companies. So Amazon, as we all know, started with offering public cloud infrastructure, public cloud to small, medium enterprises and startups, particularly startups and born in the cloud companies as well. Today, Amazon is extremely focused on the enterprise. They're reaching, in other words, reaching into the data center from the cloud. That's their kind of the direction of movement. And their strategy is innovation, because of the fact that thousands and thousands of systems are running in the Amazon cloud. They have deep knowledge of how customers use the cloud, what kind of issues and challenges they run into, and their ability to actually deliver the services, scalability and everything is top-notch. They are also, because of their understanding, they are also able to offer new category defining features and services as well. Ease of adoption is another thing that they are focusing on rightly, especially for the enterprise, particularly how do you migrate existing on-prem infrastructure to the cloud as well. Snowball, Snowmobile, Amazon Migration Services, these are some of the offerings that helps it move. We definitely see that they are the undisputed leader in the IaaS world. Microsoft, the direction is completely opposite. They're coming from the data center to the cloud. By leveraging existing extremely large installed base to expand from data center into the cloud. They started with Office 365, and now they have Microsoft 365, which is Windows and all the server products and so on and so forth offered as a complete service. In their Microsoft obviously have worked with the enterprise forever, so they know enterprise needs, enterprise concerns, the enterprise culture, everything is very well familiar with them as well. Developer friendly, Microsoft has always had one of the best development tools available in the industry. The other interesting part about Microsoft is that they are very focused on hybrid infrastructure as well. They allow customers to build the cloud infrastructure within the enterprise on-prem through Azure Stack, which is delivered, by the way, by themselves or through partners as well. Licensing, again, there are different forms of licensing. You have on-demand, on-cloud prices as list price as you can buy, but if you're an enterprise customer, if you're already a Microsoft customer, you may be able to roll some of those agreements into the cloud cloud services as well. So, now that said, let's take a look at what is the table stakes in the cloud. If you're a cloud or service provider, you need to have this. If you don't have this, you're not in the game. So in other words, what I'm trying to say here is that both Microsoft and Azure has all of these elements, and they're fairly good and comparable. In some areas, Amazon is better, especially in the IaaS platform. They have been around a lot more mature. They've been around a lot longer. But now comes to really what is right for me. So that's a question that most customers have. And over the last several years, as we work with many customers in helping with their transition to the cloud, we have fairly good understanding of what customers are thinking, what are the parameters they consider as they move to the cloud. Cost, obviously, is still a big factor. If you look in the industry, everybody's talking about cost. A lot of the thing about is, why are we moving to the cloud? Cost, right? Moving from CapEx to OpEx and cost savings. But as we talk with customers and as we see projects happening in front of our eyes, cost is actually one of the elements. It's certainly definitely a big part of the decision-making process. But really the other elements, which is very important, is what's the nature of my project and what do I have today? And how does it impact whatever I'm up to next? So these are the key elements as you make the decision. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about the two last elements, what's the nature of my project and what I have today, and how that maps into what Microsoft and Azure provides, and that gives you some ideas of how to select what cloud you need to have, right? Any questions thus far, Karina?
No, we're waiting for your prescriptive slide to show up.
Okay.
Oh, here it is.
All right, here it is. All right, so let me describe the slide a little bit first, and then I will dive into it. So what I have here is a chart. We developed this chart by looking at what are trends that we see within our customer base when we have hundreds of thousands of systems being modeled for migration to the cloud. And we see the trend, and we have interviewed several customers as well. And we do a lot of research offline, online as well to come up with this. So what we've come up here is a chart where we compare different parameters that would be applicable to you. And the orange block kind of shows what where Amazon is, and the blue one shows what Azure is. So as you can see, if you took any particular line item, and if you see more orange, that means that Amazon is advantageous in that area, whereas Microsoft is less advantageous. If you see more blue, it's the opposite, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So essentially, if you look at pure basic IaaS, you just want a bunch of servers and storage, so on and so forth, because of the maturity, the range of services available, the type of platform systems, OSs available, Amazon is definitely a significant advantage there. If you're a startup and you're really building applications using open source technologies, and if you're Unix-centric, you will find Amazon to be much more relevant for you, more advantageous for you than Azure. If you're a Windows shop, and if you're an enterprise with hundreds and hundreds of systems on-prem or today, legacy applications, and you are moving towards the cloud, and you want everything to work very well, in that case, Windows Azure definitely has an advantage. Again, extending your hybrid model, if you're planning to convert some of your on-prem infrastructure to a cloud architecture, then Microsoft does offer on-prem cloud stack, Azure Stack, which is definitely the right way to go. Amazon, on the other hand, kind of really is very focused on having everybody live in the cloud, and they're not particularly having anything to do with on-prem activities. So you don't see any product from Amazon in that area. Now, the next thing is that one of the reasons why you go to the cloud is not necessarily just because you want to rent a bunch of servers and storage. You really want to take advantage of platforms available, right? Pre-packaged platforms for databases, big data, IoT, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to a PaaS solution, we're built on open source technology, Amazon by far is a leader in that area as well. But on the other hand, if you're looking at PaaS platforms, focus on the enterprise, where you're looking at messaging, you're looking at CRM solution, you're looking at technologies similar to SharePoint and such. Again, Windows has an advantage, Azure has an advantage in this area. Now let's take a look at emerging technologies. Everybody's talking about AI, deep learning, IoT, analytics, and so on and so forth. Majority of those technologies are built on open source technology. And as I said earlier, when it comes to open source technology, Amazon is leading in the pack in that area. In this particular area, actually, Google and Amazon are pretty much neck and neck, and Microsoft is actually behind the curve there. But that said, Microsoft has just hired 5,000 AI engineers to really focus on this area as well. So this is in one area we'll see a lot of battle happening between the big three in the coming years. Now, if you're a government enterprise, government entity, you may need a government-focused cloud, which is private for you, and both Amazon and Google and Azure does provide government clouds as well. They are also able to build specifically, in fact, they have built specific private clouds for governments as well. When it comes to licensing, fees, and simplicity, it's very, very easy to just go buy Amazon services. Everything is online. You buy the on-demand or reserve instance. However, that said, some of those permutations and combinations could be mind-boggling and can be very complex, and that's where Akasha can help you there as well. When it comes to license mobility, let's say you're a Windows shop, you have a bunch of Windows licenses already in place, and you want to move them to the cloud. More than likely, it's going to be much more easier to move the licenses to Azure than to Amazon. Certifications, again, certifications are almost like a table stakes. They have certifications for almost every certification requirements, including HIPAA and others as well, and both of them are equivalent in that area. Management and monitoring tool, once you start running in operations in the cloud, those things become very, very important. Both Azure as well as AWS has fairly good management and monitoring tools as well, and that's an area where they're continuously developing and growing as well. Geographies, this could be an interesting area. So when I say geographies here, it's about where are the services being delivered. Now, here's a question that one has to, here you see that Microsoft has their services available in 42 data locations, whereas Amazon provides in 15 locations as well.
Yes. This one in particular, Gautam, in terms of geographies, it made me raise my eyebrows. And the fact that Azure has more geographies supported compared to Amazon, this is something that's an indicator of how mature Azure has become in the recent months. Also, in terms of migration, as you pointed out earlier, Amazon is prioritizing the enterprise very highly, and they've gone above and beyond to offer migration tools and migration services. So they're making it easier and easier for enterprises to migrate their on-prem workloads to Amazon. So this chart is very interesting, and if I'm an enterprise, and this is what we recommend to all of our viewers, look at the left-hand column and see which ones of those categories apply to you, which ones of those are high priority, and then look at the chart and see which one, Amazon or Azure, has more options for you. So this chart, I think, is very useful, and this is the prescriptive area that we were talking about earlier in the presentation.
So thank you, Garima, for clarifying that. I do want to make one more comment on the geography. So when I say there are 42 locations for Azure and 15 locations for Amazon, there's a fine distinction here that one should consider as well. When Amazon provides, when they say that they have 15 locations, they actually have data centers in all of those locations. Microsoft has data centers, but there's a distinction between it being the ability to provide services versus having their own data centers. A lot of the cloud operators, including Microsoft and Google and other, I'm sorry, not Google, and IBM and Oracle and others, they actually have footprint in many locations by having a bunch of servers and edge routers and fast connect in data centers owned by other entities such as Equinix and others, so that they have affinity to geography, but the data actually, the core data may still reside in their own core data centers located in their big data centers. So as you consider geographies, one of the things you may want to consider is asking your account managers from the cloud operators is that where, even if they have presence in the location that you're interested in, is the data actually going to stay there? That's a question one should always ask. Right. So again, to your point, Garima, you nailed it in the sense that, as you're considering moving to the cloud, look at the left-hand column, which one is the one which is applicable for you. Look to the right and say which has more color, which color is more predominant, and that's the area you may want to consider. And now that brings an interesting point. As you're an enterprise and you have lots of things happening around you, more than likely one cloud is not going to be the solution for you. So for certain products and projects, you may consider Amazon. For certain other projects, you may consider Azure as well, right? That's a very important point.
Okay. One thing that we haven't mentioned here is cost, even though, as Gautam pointed out earlier, cost is the main reason that enterprises are considering the cloud. Reason why we don't have cost in that previous chart is because cost is so specific to the nature of your workloads. So, and our entire demo is focused on cost. Once you've made a decision based on your other parameters, take a look at the details of what the cost ends up being for you in Amazon or Azure.
Right. Thank you. That was a very nice lead into my next slide. So essentially, once you have kind of narrowed down your choice of the cloud based on what you have and what's the nature of your project, the next fundamental question that you're going to come up with is, what do I have on-prem and what is needed to replace that with something else on the cloud, be it Amazon, be it Google, be it Azure. And then, by the way, I'm building on a brand new cloud application, or I'm building out a hybrid infrastructure, and so what new stuff that I need in the cloud, and how much is it going to cost? Really, that's those are the three questions you need answered, even as you make the decision to move forward with your cloud projects. So, and to just give you a perspective, when it comes to offerings, different kinds of products, and when there are millions of choices available out there. In EC2 itself, there are 100+ products of different varieties. And then once you consider the type of licensing, the type of purchase options, you're talking about 100,000+ options. And when you add other clouds to consider as well, then this choice that you have becomes very, very, and the options are, and you have to choose among millions, and that can be very complicated. And that's where we in Akasha come into play, right? So we are in the business of helping enterprise transition to the cloud. So we help enterprises determine what would be needed to replace what you have on-prem with in cloud, what would be needed to build out a hybrid infrastructure, and what will be the costs associated. And if you are to run my application in the VMware cloud or in AWS, Azure, Google, IBM, and Oracle, and we give you this information within minutes to an hour. That's really what we do. So let's talk a little bit about what we do more than just this one. So essentially, we have three offerings. The first product we call is AIM. It's for helping you figure out lift and shift or lift and optimize applications. When you have a large set of applications and infrastructure running on-prem and you need to replace that with something in the cloud, what would be needed, how much would it cost? Essentially, that's what AIM does. The other product is ACM. This is really when you're thinking about brand new cloud initiative project. So when you're building something new, you want to know what are the technologies available, what are the technologies provided by each of the different cloud operators in that particular area, and how much will it cost you if you were to do that. And the third is our services, where we help with any part of the transition process with our professional services team. With that, I am going to switch to my my demo, right?
Okay.
So as I prepare for my demo, Garima, you have a few things to do?
Yes, let me just do one quick poll as you're setting up your demo. So if you all could take a few seconds and just answer that one poll we have. The poll will be open just for a few seconds. So go ahead and answer that. People are still voting. Okay, I think everybody that wanted to vote has voted so far. And these are the results. So it looks as if an equal number of you wants to migrate existing workloads, and both new and existing. And 18% of you only wants to deploy new applications.
So you want to hide your poll? Oh, okay. Poll results. See it? I don't see it.
You don't see it? Okay.
Okay.
All right. Great. All right. With that, Gautam, we are on to the demo.
All right. So in the demo, I have two products that we're going to talk about today. The first product is the infrastructure modeling AIM. This is the product I would use as I plan to do a lift and shift or lift and optimize my applications currently on-prem to the cloud. So what I'm going to do is, as I walk through this, a couple of things I'm going to show you is, first and foremost, the act of actually collecting information about your on-prem infrastructure. Once I collect this, I'm going to upload that information to our SaaS platform here, and then I'm going to actually start modeling that into equivalents in the cloud. I'm going to do some what-if analysis, and at the end of the day, what I'm going to show you is a bill of materials of the product and the cost associated with that as well. So that will be my demo for the first part. So I start with managing my source data. So as you can see that these are different sources that I already have collected. So if I'm looking about a brand new data center that I'm dealing with, I'll first do the download my remote collector, and this is a very thin application, about 25 megabytes of Java application that you would run, and this application would go and collect information from existing information database. We don't go, and this is not intrusive. There's not an agent involved there. It just goes and collects information. It collects information such as configuration information about the host, configuration information about virtual machines, about storage, and also we collect, especially in a VMware environment, we collect information related to activity of each virtual machine in terms of I/O, in terms of networking, in terms of peak CPU performance, average CPU performance, utilization, memory utilization as well, over a 12-year period. So as a result, we can see how you've been operating your environment for 12 months. Once we do that, what it does is it spits out 4 different files. One is related to this, and we pick those CSV files. These are human readable, by the way, and you can choose to read it yourself before you upload. There's no confidential information, no passwords, no IP addresses taken. Then you give it a name, and you upload, and at the end of that, you will end up with something like this. So I'm going to use this particular one, which I've already collected over the past. And right off the bat, when I collect that, it's going to show me the what I have already. So I have in this environment, I have 108 hosts, and I have some 673 terabytes of disk space, of which 350 has been allocated. This is the amount of memory totally available across. This is the number of CPUs, number of cores. And these are the virtual machines I have available. I have 1675, of which 232 are powered off. And this is very important. By the way, one of the things to consider as you're planning to migrate your infrastructure to the cloud, it's reasonably easy for you to know what's the configuration of your host and virtual machines. What is very difficult to know is what's the type, how much amount of network activity is happening, how much of the disk I/O happening, what's the utilization of CPU memory, and so on and so forth. Because those elements has a huge factor in the cost of your cloud infrastructure. So what we do is, in a few minutes, we gather this data and we present this to you, and we do the modeling for you as well. So now, what you see here in this multicolored chart is that if you were to consider moving this entire infrastructure, all the powered on, not the powered off, into the cloud, this is a quick snapshot of how much is it costing today. How much will it cost? So this is, the first line is how much is it costing on-prem for you to run this infrastructure, and how much would it cost to run all of these in the cloud as we see today, right? So this is a quick snapshot of it. So one might ask, how did we go about determining what's on-prem cost? Well, we gathered all of the configuration information about every single host and storage that you have. And what we do is we have done a lot of research in looking at the cost of hardware from Dell, Cisco, Lenovo, and HP, and we have a generic model of costing, and based on your infrastructure configuration, we provide you a generic cost estimate of how much it might cost you. But we encourage you to actually edit the cost that we've come up with your real cost. And you could do that by doing edit source cost here, and I'm going to not do that right now. But right now, so in other words, this is a cost that we have estimated. You can apply your real cost here, and so that you can do a real comparison as well. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and do the modeling. So essentially, I have 1600 something VM that I'm considering moving to the cloud, and I obviously want to see everything moving, but in my project I'm going to do the first 50 or 60 and then move the rest and so on and so forth. So I can choose to do whatever I need to do based on what I'm up to. So this is my data center. I can pick and choose from other data centers that's available, and then I have to select my systems that I want to model for. I can select by the host, in which case the list of all the hosts shows up, and if I pick a particular host, then all the machines inside that particular host and their configuration will be seen here, as you see. And then I can add this, select all of them and add to my modeling group. But for the sake of this demo, I want to make it a little more interesting. So instead of picking by host, I'm just going to pick all the virtual machines so that you can see how it's dealing with a fairly large set of data. And I'm going to take on only the powered on machines. So if I select this, okay, and then I have selected all of these systems. I add to my modeling group here. And these are basically, I have 1,443 virtual machines that I have an intention to model for. And by the way, oops, I made a mistake. I don't want this and this and this to be modeled within this group. So I can remove those. So now I'm down to 1,439. And I can go ahead. And the next thing is, now that I have a basket of systems that I want to compare and see what's going to look like in the cloud, I can just go and say compare cloud cost. So it's doing a lot of number crunching behind the scenes, and so that's why it took a little bit of time. So basically, again, here's a quick summary of it. I picked 1,439 virtual machines. So this is the total number of vCPUs allocated. This is the amount of CPU cycles allocated to these machines. This amount of storage, this amount of memory. Currently, based on my cost model, it is costing me X amount of dollars per month. And by the way, remember, when we did the costing, I was talking about costing by the physical server and so on and so forth. Now we're talking virtual machines. So essentially what we do here underneath is that the cost of the infrastructure is allocated to each virtual machine in a fair manner based on its configuration and size. So essentially, because you're moving virtual machines to the cloud, not necessarily moving physical servers. So that's the reason why we do that. Here again, based for this 1,439 machine, this is a quick snapshot of how much it will cost. It goes a little more detail here, different types of clouds, on-prem versus on-demand, Amazon, AWS Reserve Instance, 1 year. And these are the 3 different options from VMware Cloud on Amazon, Azure, IBM, and Google as well here. And then this is a chart, quick chart up front. And then here is the details. So now I want to focus on 1 or 2 of these, and you can see Amazon, all of the different clouds. You'll see that each one of these shows the details of each one of the clouds that you have. As you look at this one, remember we did collect information about networking activities, egress activities. So this was an environment with fairly large network egress activity going on. So the cost of network egress is likely to be $62,000, in that range. I/O cost. There's lots of systems, lots of I/O, but that said, the volume of I/O still falls within the free tier of Amazon. That's why its cost is 0. Storage cost, as is, based on what is allocated today to your virtual machines, the cost is about $33,000, and the compute cost, based on current configuration, is about close to $700,000. So you're talking about a total cost of $700,000 to run this infrastructure in the cloud, which currently is costing you $248K. Ooh, why would I do that? But really, here's the deal. Most environment on-prem are over-provisioned. You really don't want to move your system as is configured. You want to take a look at how the systems have been used regardless of how it's been provisioned. And what we do is we actually collect that information for you. And based on that utilization information, we recommend actually a right-sized configuration and cost. And if you were to accept our right-size configurations, recommendations, then the cost of your storage would shrink down from $33K to $24, and the compute cost would be about $93K in the case of Amazon On Demand. So your total cost would be about $180K versus $250 per month in this area. Now, if you were to look at Amazon Reserve instance, 1 year paid up front, this is the kind of amount you would see as well. And you can see this for every one of the cloud. So today we're talking about Amazon, so and Azure. So let's just pick any one of these. Let's just pick Azure. So if I click on this, what happens next is it's going through some calculation in the back. So it's going to take a little bit of time to show up. So any questions at this time, Garima? As this screen is being refreshed, there's a lot of calculations happening underneath right now.
Okay. So there are some questions. One of them is, how do you get the pricing for the cloud vendors?
How do we get the price? Okay, so we have in our architecture, we have 3 subsystems. One is actually the collector, which is an offline activity. So we provide an application which goes and collects the on-prem infrastructure information. And then we have what we call as cloud price collectors. So essentially, there's a bunch of little applications which goes and monitors all of the offerings, the products, and the prices from all the clouds that we support today. And we look at the data generated by those collectors. We review it against what is currently in our database, and if there's a change, we update our database with the latest and greatest information. And we do the collection once in 24 hours. We might do the updates once in 48 hours, and so on and so forth. So I selected the Amazon On Demand. It went deep, Azure, and this is what the Azure infrastructure looks like. It's going to cost about $200K if you would optimize. And here's the details that you're looking for. For each of these systems, this is the name of the virtual machine, this is the ID. Based on the configuration, this is the specific shape or size of the virtual machine in Amazon that it maps to. This one is basically what we recommend based on the utilization within that particular system, utilization of CPU, memory, and storage. And as you can see, as you move, these are the more information about that particular system. But here's the thing, the compute cost. The compute cost comprises of basically the CPU and memory, the shape itself, the F4 windows in this case. And this is the cost of the extra storage, the blob storage, or whatever storage you were talking about. And the total cost is this. Now compare this with standard A1, which is what we recommend based on the activity within this particular system. It's about $34, so there's a significant savings, about $300 per month in this area. This is important. This is a very important information you need to have as you consider moving to the cloud.
Could you show them how you do the right sizing? So can you click on the configuration and show them what's been utilized versus allocated?
Okay. So let's see. So as you can see, you can hear, let's say that in this particular, this is a system with 4 vCPUs, 120 GB of RAM, 8 GB of storage, 8 GB of RAM, and this is the network with hardly any I/O activity going on here. And look at this. This is recommended based on the activity that we see. We are actually recommending a shape which is 1 CPU and so much size of and so much memory available. So that's how you can see the difference between the configuration that you have versus what we are recommending. All right. Did that answer your question? All right. Here's another important aspect. Basically, here's the other thing which is very important. This is what's configured. Based on what's configured, this is what we recommend. But you could say, hey, Gautam, that's all very fine. But you know what? I would be interested in saying not necessarily, I hear your recommendation, but I am interested in actually going to an F1 Windows. I'm still going to go override that with something else. So when that happens, you see that the number has changed from $300 something to $81. So in other words, what we are saying here is that right off the bat, you will see a mapping of your system based on your configuration to something in the cloud, and you'll also see what we recommend, but at the same time, you have the ability to override with what you want as well. Okay? Moving right along, this is now basically, I've got 1,443 something machines. I have mapped each one of those to the equivalent in the cloud in Azure now. The next thing is that as I move to the cloud, I may need additional services. I may want to add some premium storage on top of whatever I have. I may want to add Azure Site Recovery. So I'm going to add Azure Site Recovery out of that 1,400 something, and then I want to add a database warehouse, for instance. Let's say this is the one I want to add. And I want to add a bunch of VPN gateways. So these are additional services that is available in Amazon that is relevant when it comes to moving what you have on-prem. It's not relevant. You don't see AI products here and so on and so forth. We would treat those things as brand new projects, so you will not see this in this drop-down list. But these are services which is applicable in a scenario when you're moving something from on-prem to on-cloud. Now, whatever I added, they show up here in my basket of shopping list, if you please. In this Azure Site Recovery, I got one basically, but I want it for 10 critical servers. And then I want to do this, 2 of these units. And this is where you may want to consider talking to some solution architects or our professional services team to help you figure out what additional stuff you may need. Okay, so I've added these elements, and then now since I'm treating this as an overall project, right? So I may want to consider adding some cost of migrating this one-time cost of, let's say, I'm going to pay somebody $30,000 to move my 1,400 servers across, and then maybe I may need to buy some tools and so on and so forth. So I'm going to budget another $10,000 for that purpose. And then, by the way, I've moved a lot of my servers to the cloud, but my team sits in a building 50 miles away or 100 miles away. How do I get access to those servers? So you may need to buy some MPLS circuits extra, which might cost, let's say, $1,500 a month. And then, by the way, we may need to hire a couple of new system administrators who are trained in the cloud. So I'm going to say, okay, we need about 80 or 100 hours per month for that. And let's say, $80 an hour. And then let's go generate the final cost. So at this point of time, what it's doing is that it's generating a complete bill of materials, adding up all the costs, summarizing it for you, and so on and so forth. So it'll take a few seconds as we go through. Right. So a lot of number crunching happening there. All right, there we go. So these are the VM candidates. This is a quick summary of your environment. This is the on-premise cost today. And then this is the right size. I wouldn't worry about the as-is, because as-is is not really something you should consider, but really this is what you want to consider. This is right-sized, which includes not only my servers, but the other elements that on my disaster recovery, the other elements that I've chosen as well. Now, since you're talking to Microsoft and you are a Microsoft existing customer, and you have enterprise license agreement, you may be able to get, let's say, 10% discount. You apply that here, and you will see those numbers change right away as well. So here's a summary of your Microsoft Azure environment. Again, this is the monthly cost, advanced services, which is the extras that we talked about. This is the network cost, and this is I/O cost, and storage and other compute cost as well. So other monthly costs, this actually includes your networking, the system administrators, and so on and so forth. Your total cost is this at this time. These are the products, the elements that you have. And let's move this. So, excuse me, I'm struggling a little bit with my mouse here. Okay, so at the bottom what you see here is that so far you saw a bunch of tables which really listed out each one of these systems, the exact virtual machine, and what is as is configured and as recommended by us. You'll see all of that, the configuration, the cost, and so on and so forth. And this is the additional elements that I decided to purchase. And these are the additional costs that I would incur as we go along and during the operations. And this is a one-time cost as well. And this is my final cost if I were to go with the recommended right size mapping. Now at this point of time, I can export this particular thing into a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet, and I can save this project and come back the later day and edit it or save it or print it, whatever I want to do as well. So that kind of concludes the demo of AIM at this time. So any questions around AIM at this time?
One of the questions is how much free storage allowance is calculated in your estimate? And the answer that I submitted was each template has a free storage allowance, and that is what we include in our mapping algorithm. And then another question that's just come in is, are the VMware configuration and performance information being captured from vCenter database or the vRealize database? So the answer to that is we are capturing it from the vCenter database. So you're not required to have vRealize to be able to use our tool. We pull it off of just the vCenter database. So again, you're not required to have vRealize. Let's see, any other questions? Very good questions coming in, by the way. How do you determine the right size configuration for CPU, memory, and storage? Like we showed you, we have an on-prem collector that discovers the configuration of your infrastructure as well as its utilization. And the utilization we look at is over the last 1 year. And that doesn't mean you have to have our collector running for 1 year. Our collector runs for just a few minutes. But in those few minutes, we're able to discover what's been going on as far as the utilization goes for the last 1 year. So if we discover that you have 4 vCPUs, for example, allocated to a virtual machine, but you've only been using 1 vCPU, then we show you that in our right sizing table. And this is what Gautam had showed you earlier. But anyway, these are some of the questions that have come in. Gautam, you can show us the demo of our next product, ACM, which is for new cloud deployment.
Right. Thank you. So here, I'm going to start modeling my cloud modeling exercise. So what you see here is on the left-hand side, what we have done is we've collected the categories of all the services that the cloud service providers provide. So this includes services from Amazon, Azure, Google, IBM, and Oracle. And you can see the different categories here. And essentially, as you're considering building your application, your new next generation applications, you will see on the right-hand side for each category the products categories available. So for instance, let's say I'm going to start with some VMs. I'm going to have some containers. I just definitely obviously need container management, and I intend to use some serverless compute as well. So essentially, as I add these, as you can see, as I click this, you start seeing products offered by these 5 vendor cloud operators, as you can see. For example, in serverless compute, the product from Amazon is called Lambda, Microsoft is called Functions, and IBM is called OpenWhisk, and Google calls it Cloud Functions, and Oracle calls it Oracle Functions, although it is not available to the public yet. So now once you select this, and I could be selecting, let's say, other elements such as databases or mobile services, a whole bunch of things, including application services, PaaS, and analytics, machine learning, game development, and so on and so forth. So the next thing is that, so essentially when you start adding this and clicking this, it gets added to this basket, if you please, and you will see a product offering from each cloud. The next thing is that you want to know how much is going to cost you. So essentially the cost is dependent upon the configuration of whatever you're looking at. So I'm going to add, okay, I'm looking at a system which has got 4 CPUs and got 16 GB of RAM, and it's a Linux server, and it's a memory optimized machine type. Container registry, by the way, I don't have anything to provide here because, by the way, it's all for free, but you will see it, and you can see some notes from us as well. So if it's free, you'll see that it's free and so on. So you'll see some notes from here as well. Memory, it's now serverless compute. So when it comes to serverless compute, let's say that each execution of my serverless compute is 128 megabytes of RAM. Each compute is 1 second I'm executing, and I am executing, let's say, 2,200,000. Is that 2 million? Okay. Executions per month. Did I miss anything here? Let's go back. Okay, let's take a look at my basket. I'm just going to remove these guys which are free and then continue with this. And then you can see that right off the bat, so for those products, couple of products that I've chosen, these are the costs that you can see from Google, from those per month, and this is the per year cost as well. And these are the summary of the products, and the monthly cost for EC2 is, for that particular system, is so much. It gets compared with something from Azure right next to each other, and this is the cost that you will see across the board. For Lambda, this is the cost that you would see, and for the entire 2 products that I've chosen, this is the total cost that I would see. All right, so this is the cost summary. This is my bill of material. These are the products that I need, and again, this is the total cost, and you see the cost as well. And now that said, now I want to go to detail mapping for those virtual machines. This is where you can do some what-if analysis. So right now I'm seeing that this particular system got, mapped to an R4 Lars. I want to see what it will look like if I pick an M4 Lars. So it goes through the calculation and suddenly changes the cost from somewhere in 2,000 area to 800 something. So this is the kind of what-if model you can do as well. So for products where you have different configurations, different offerings, you want to test each different kinds of overrides and so on and so forth, this is something you would be allowed to do. You can also change the purchase option. For instance, lease contract options, purchase options. So do I do all up front or partial up front? Do I do this 1 year, 3 year, what is that? Reserve instance, right? So you can each one of those you can change over, and it will make a difference. A lot of what-if analysis can be done as well. And this is a serverless compute. There isn't a whole lot of configurations to be done here. It is what it is, and this is the cost that you would see. All right. So this is how you can go about building, modeling your application that you intend to build newly. And right now, I just showed you a couple of elements. You know, I can spend hours talking about different products that you can choose and configure and play around with. We definitely recommend you to do a trial and see for yourself how it looks like. In addition to all of these things, we're going to be releasing something called a new feature within AIMS. This is currently available on our test server. I just wanted to quickly show you. For here, what you see here is now not exactly a comparison of X to X here, which what you showed earlier, but this one gives a complete list of all the products from Amazon. So compute, you know, what's the name of the product? How is it priced? Pricing notes. What's the description of that? And EC2 container registry is free, but it's what it is, and so on and so forth. You can see the same thing for Microsoft. You can see the same thing for Google and Amazon and IBM as well. So this is something that we will be rolling out in about 2 weeks. So something that you may be interested as you're starting about thinking brand new cloud activities. So let's get back to my presentation. So let's see, what did I do so far? I'm kind of wrapping up my demo, as you can see. So what I did was I talked about discovering your on-prem infrastructure. We model and customize on-prem costs. We come up with a basic generic cost, and you can override that with your own particular cost. We map to different clouds. We compare costs across different clouds. And okay, so this was specific to VMware Cloud. Then plan allocation and additional services in AWS or Azure, and then add transition cost as well, which we did, migration cost, and then you saw the final cost, bill of materials and allocation and so on and so forth.
All right, thank you very much. The questions are coming in fast and furious. What we will do is take a copy of all the Q&A and include it in our emails out to you all so you have them. We are running up against the hours, and respect to all your time, we will conclude the presentation now. Thank you very much for joining, and you will get an email with all the Q&A as well as a recording of this presentation. Have a wonderful rest of the day.